Kwande stared out the viewport as the shuttle approached Crosspoint Haven. The massive orbital station hung in space like a steel flower, its docking arms stretching out in all directions. He had seen dozens of stations before, but this one was different. This one felt wrong somehow. He pushed the feeling away and checked his data pad again. The job was simple enough. A Valerian trade delegation needed a translator for their negotiations with the Thrace Collective. Both species were notoriously difficult to work with, but Day had experience with worse. At 28 years old, he had built a solid reputation as a xenolinguist. He could parse alien languages that made most translation software crash. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud. Day grabbed his single bag and headed out. The station's air smelled recycled and slightly metallic, standard for deep space habitats. He followed the signs to the administrative office, weaving through crowds of various alien species. Valerians towered over everyone else, their scaled bodies covered in decorative armor. Thrace skittered past on multiple legs, their antennae twitching as they communicated through chemical signals. At the admin desk, a human woman looked up from her screen. She had tired eyes and her badge read Hana Soman, Station Administrator. "Kwande?" she asked. "That's me." Hana stood and shook his hand. Her grip was firm, almost too firm. "Welcome to Crosspoint Haven. Your quarters are in Section 7. The Valerian delegation is expecting you tomorrow morning at 0800. Any issues I should know about?" Day asked. He had learned to trust his instincts, and something about Hana's expression bothered him. She hesitated. "The negotiations are tense. Both sides want these mineral rights badly. Just do your job and stay professional. Don't wander into the lower cargo decks." "Why not?" "Station policy," she said quickly. Too quickly. "Security reasons." Day nodded slowly but filed that information away. Station administrators didn't get nervous without good reason. His quarters were small but clean. A bed, a desk, a small bathroom. Everything he needed. Day spent the evening reviewing his materials. Valerian honor codes were complex, full of ritual phrases and hierarchical structures. One wrong word could turn a negotiation into a blood feud. The Thrace were equally complicated. They communicated through layers of chemical signals that had to be translated into verbal approximations. Around midnight, someone knocked on his door. Day opened it to find another human, a woman in security uniform. She was younger than him, maybe 25, with sharp eyes. "Yuna Minjae," she introduced herself. "Security liaison. Just checking on our new arrivals." "Bit late for a welfare check," Day observed. Yuna glanced down the corridor. "Can I come in?" Day stepped aside. Yuna entered and closed the door behind her. "Look," she said quietly. "You seem like a smart guy, so I'm going to give you some advice. When you're done with your translation work each day, go straight back to your quarters. Don't explore. Don't ask questions. And if you hear anything strange at night, ignore it." "What's going on?" Day asked. "I don't know," Yuna admitted. "But there have been disappearances. Small species mostly, the kind nobody notices right away. Station admin says it's nothing, just people leaving without proper checkout. But I've been doing security for 3 years. I know when something's wrong. Have you reported it?" "To who?" "Hana says there's no evidence. The Valerians in Thrace are focused on their negotiations. Nobody wants to rock the boat." Yuna moved toward the door. "Just watch yourself, okay?" After she left, Day tried to sleep but couldn't. He kept thinking about what Hana and Yuna had said. Disappearances, lower cargo decks, the nervous energy that seemed to permeate the entire station. Morning came too quickly. Day dressed in his formal translator's jacket and made his way to the conference sector. The room was large and circular with translation equipment built into the walls. The Valerian delegation had already arrived. Commander Tralvin stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scales a deep bronze color. 2 other Valerians flanked him, their hands resting on ceremonial weapons. The Thrace delegation arrived moments later, 4 insectoid beings that moved in perfect synchronization. "Translator," Tralvin rumbled in Valerian, "you will convey our words with honor." "With honor," Day replied in perfect Valerian, including the proper honorific suffix. Tralvin's eyes widened slightly. Most human translators used software assistants. Day speaking fluent Valerian was unexpected. The first session went well. Day found himself falling into the familiar rhythm of translation. He didn't just convert words from one language to another. He translated meaning, context, cultural nuance. When Tralvin used a Valerian metaphor about mountain winds, Day converted it into a Thrace concept about hive temperature regulation. Both species understood each other better than they ever had before. Hours passed. The negotiations covered mineral extraction rates, profit sharing, and transportation logistics. Boring but important work. By the time they broke for lunch, Day felt confident. This was what he was good at. This was why he had taken the job. He ate alone in the station cafeteria, reviewing his notes. The afternoon session was scheduled to discuss dispute resolution procedures. Dry material but necessary. The second session went as smoothly as the first. By the end of the day, both delegations seemed satisfied. Tralvin approached Day after the Thrace had left. "You translate well, human. Better than most. We request you remain for the full negotiation period." "That was the plan," Day said. "Good." Tralvin studied him. "You speak our language like you were born to it. How?" "I listened to 3,000 hours of Valerian military communications," Day explained. "Your language reveals how you think. Understanding that makes translation easier." Tralvin made a sound that might have been approval. "Perhaps your species is not as weak as we assumed." After the Valerians left, Day returned to his quarters. He felt satisfied with the day's work. Everything was going according to plan. Just a week of negotiations. Then he would collect his payment and move on to the next job. He was reviewing tomorrow's agenda when the lights flickered. Then they went red. Station alarms began to wail, a harsh electronic scream that echoed through the corridors. Dee jumped to his feet. Emergency lighting cast everything in crimson shadows. He grabbed his datapad and checked the station network. Access denied, communications offline, security. Lockdown initiated. His door wouldn't open. Day hit the manual override and it slid partway open before jamming. He squeezed through into the corridor. Other residents were emerging from their quarters, confused and frightened. Day could hear shouting from nearby sections. Then he heard something else. Gunfire. The screaming started a moment later. Day ran toward the conference sector. It was the only place he knew with reinforced doors and multiple exits. Others had the same idea. He found himself pushed along by a tide of panicking beings, all fleeing the sounds of gunfire and explosions. The conference room door was still open. Day dove inside along with a dozen others. A Valerian warrior slammed the control panel and the heavy door sealed shut with a hiss. Day looked around, breathing hard. 3 Valerians, including Tralvin, 4 Thrace workers, Hanasomin and 2 other humans he didn't recognize, 2 small aliens from species he couldn't identify. Everyone looked terrified. "What's happening?" one of the humans asked. "Attack," Tralvin growled. "Raiders. They have sealed the station sections and cut communications." One of the Thrace released a cloud of yellow chemical signals. The smell was sharp and acidic. Panic pheromones. The other Thrace immediately responded with their own chemicals, creating a feedback loop of fear. "Stop that," Day said in Thrace chemical approximation, using a phrase that meant roughly, "calm the hive mind." The Thrace froze, their antenna turning toward him. One clicked its mandibles in surprise. Humans rarely bothered learning Thrace communication. "We need to fight," Tralvin declared in Valerian. "Warriors do not hide like prey." "The colony must survive," one of the Thrace responded in its own language, releasing defensive pheromones. "We wait for help." "There is no help coming," Tralvin shot back. They were speaking past each other, not to each other. Day realized with sudden clarity that without someone to bridge the gap, this group would tear itself apart before the raiders even found them. "Commander Tralvin," Day said in formal Valerian, "your warrior wisdom is needed. But so is Thrace survival strategy. Let me translate properly." Tralvin's eyes narrowed. "Speak, translator." Day took a breath. "The Thrace are not cowards. In their language, survival of the colony is the highest honor. They're saying the same thing you are, just in different words. They want to protect everyone here." He turned to the Thrace. "The Valerians honor strength through action. They're offering to defend us, which is their way of showing respect for the colony." The chemical signals from the Thrace shifted. Less panic, more curiosity. "Can we work together?" Hana asked. "Maybe," Day said, "if we can communicate clearly." They spent the next hour planning. It was harder than any negotiation Day had ever done. Every species thought differently, valued different things, and had different ways of expressing ideas. The Valerians wanted to assault the raiders directly. The Thrace wanted to find hidden routes through the station's infrastructure. The smaller aliens just wanted to hide. Day translated not just words but entire worldviews. When Tralvin talked about honor and death, Day framed it as protecting the colony with strength. When the Thrace suggested using ventilation shafts, Day presented it to the Valerians as tactical advantage through superior positioning. Slowly, impossibly, a plan formed. The Thrace would scout ahead using their small size and chemical sensors. The Valerians would provide security. The humans and smaller aliens would stay in the middle of the group. They would move together toward the emergency escape pods in Section 3. "What about weapons?" one of the humans asked. Tralvin drew a ceremonial blade from his belt. The other Valerians did the same. The Thrace had nothing. The humans had nothing. "We improvised," Day said. They opened the door carefully. The corridor outside was empty but showed signs of battle. Burn marks on the walls, blood in various colors splattered across the floor. The light still flashed red. The group moved as one unit. The lead Thrace, one named Ketharix, scuttled ahead on its 6 legs. Its antenna twitched as it sampled the air for chemical signals and heat signatures. It would return periodically to report to Day, who would translate for the others. They found more survivors in a storage room. 2 more humans, including Una Minje. She was armed with a security baton and looked relieved to see them. "How bad is it?" Hana asked. "Bad," Una said. "The raiders are called the Krell, mercenaries. They're after the Valerian diplomatic shuttle. Apparently it's carrying something valuable." Tralvin said nothing, but his silence was confirmation enough. "They've taken hostages in the main docking bay," Una continued. "At least 50 beings. They're using them as leverage." "Against who?" Day asked. "Anyone who might fight back." The group continued moving. They had gone 3 sections when Ketharix came scuttling back, releasing urgent red pheromones. "Danger ahead, how many?" Day asked, and Thrace Ketharix's antenna pattern indicated 5 or 6. "Armed, blocking the corridor intersection ahead." "We could backtrack," Hana suggested. "That adds an hour," Una said. "We don't have an hour. Their sweep patterns will catch us." Tralvin stepped forward. "We fight." 6 armed raiders against 3 Valerians with knives? One of the humans protested. "That's suicide." "Not if we're smart about it," Day heard himself say. Everyone turned to look at him. Day's mind was racing. He had studied predatory species for years, learned their hunting languages, their pack tactics, their territorial behaviors. The Krell raiders were using standard mercenary formations. He knew those patterns. "The Thrace can create a distraction," he said slowly, thinking it through. "Release fear pheromones in the vents to make them think a large group is coming from the east. The Valerians hit them from the west while they're looking the wrong direction. The rest of us provide support, throw things, make noise, create chaos." "You want us to ambush them?" Una asked. "Yes." "That's insane." "It's tactical," Day corrected. "The Krell expect us to run or hide. They won't expect an organized counterattack from mixed species who can't even communicate properly." Tralvin showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "The translator thinks like a warrior. I think like a linguist," Day said. "I know how predators communicate. The Krell use intimidation as their primary weapon. If we remove the fear, they lose their advantage. They set up the ambush." Day's heart hammered in his chest. This was nothing like translating trade negotiations. But the logic was the same. Understanding how others think. Using that knowledge to find common ground, or in this case, common tactics. The Thrace released their pheromones into the ventilation system. The Krell raiders tensed, turning toward the eastern corridor. The Valerians charged from the west. The fight was brutal and quick. Day found himself grabbing a loose pipe and swinging it at a raider's knee. The impact jarred his arms, but the raider went down. Someone else, one of the humans, grabbed the raider's weapon. 30 seconds later, it was over. 6 raiders down. The group had taken no casualties. Tralvin looked at Day with new respect. "You have warrior blood, translator." Day stared at his shaking hands. They had just ambushed and defeated 6 armed mercenaries. He had helped plan it. He had participated in it. "We need to keep moving," he said quietly. But something had changed. The group no longer looked scared. They looked determined. And they were looking to him for direction. The group moved through the station's darkened corridors with new confidence. Day found himself at the front next to Ketharix and Tralvin. It felt wrong. He was just a translator, but every time he tried to step back, someone would ask him a question about the next move. They found more survivors in a sealed medical bay. A doctor and 3 patients, along with 2 station maintenance workers. The group was growing, 15 beings now, 8 different species. Day had to translate between all of them constantly. We can't all fit in the escape pods, and Hana pointed out. Even if we reach them. Then we don't escape, Yuna said. We take back the station. With 15 people against 100 armed raiders? One of the humans protested. 16, said one of the maintenance workers, a stout alien named Beck. And I know every access tunnel and service corridor in this station. I can get us anywhere. Day looked at their ragtag group. Valerian warriors. Thrace scouts. Humans with no combat training. Maintenance workers. A doctor. It should have been hopeless. But there was something else here. Something he had never seen before. They were working together. Different species, different languages, different ways of thinking. But they were coordinating in ways that shouldn't be possible. We need weapons, Trelevan said. The armory is in Section 5. That's on the other side of the station, Beck pointed out. Through raider-controlled territory. Can we go around? Day asked. Beck pulled up a station schematic on a datapad. Maybe. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs parallel to the main corridor. It's narrow. The Valerians won't fit. Then we split up, Day said. He was thinking out loud now. His mind processing tactics like he would process grammar patterns. Small team takes the tunnel. Moves fast. The rest create a distraction in the main corridor. You want to divide our forces? Trelevan questioned. I want to use our diversity, Day explained. The raiders think in simple terms. Big force, small force. They don't understand that we can be multiple things at once. The plan was risky. Day would lead a small team through the maintenance tunnel. Himself, 2 Thrace, including Catharics, and 1 human named Junho. The rest would create noise and movement in the main corridor, making the raiders think the entire group was there. The maintenance tunnel was dark and cramped. Day had to crawl on his hands and knees behind the Thrace, who moved easily through the tight space. Junho cursed quietly behind him. They could hear fighting above them. The distraction team was doing their job. Day forced himself to focus on moving forward, not thinking about what might be happening to the others. The tunnel opened into a storage area near the armory. Day and his team emerged quietly. Through a doorway, he could see the armory entrance. 2 raiders stood guard, both wearing heavy armor and carrying energy weapons. 2 guards, Day whispered. Ideas? Catharics released a questioning pheromone. Could they use chemical signals? Not on armored enemies, Day answered in Thrace. The suits filter air. Then we need to get close, Junho said. Those energy weapons will cook us at range. Day studied the guards. They were relaxed, confident, not expecting an attack from inside their secured area. He noticed they were speaking to each other in Krell battle cant, a mixed language he had studied briefly. They were complaining about duty assignments, bored with guard work. An idea formed. I can distract them, Day said. Junho, when they focus on me, you take the one on the left. Catharics, the one on the right. Go for the helmet seals. What are you going to do? Junho asked. Something stupid. Day walked out into the open, hands raised. Don't shoot. He called in Krell battle cant. I'm surrendering. The guards spun toward him, weapons raised. How did you get here? One demanded in Krell. Through the tunnels, Day said, still in their language. He kept walking toward them slowly. Look, I'm just a translator. I don't want to die. Your commander wants prisoners, right? I'm worth more alive. The guards exchanged glances. Day kept talking, using every bit of his linguistic knowledge to sound confident and harmless at the same time. He mixed in submissive postures from their body language, kept his hands visible, maintained non-threatening eye contact. 3 meters away, 2 meters. The guards were focused entirely on him. Junho and Catharik struck simultaneously. Junho swung a piece of pipe into one guard's helmet with a loud crack. Catharix leaped onto the other guard's back, its sharp limbs finding the helmet seal and twisting. Both guards went down. Day stood there shaking. That actually worked. You speak Krell? Junho asked, grabbing one of the energy weapons. I speak 17 languages, Day said, including ones I hope I never need to use again. They opened the armory. Weapons, armor, supplies, more than they could carry. Day grabbed a communicator and tried to reach the rest of their group. Static. The raiders were still jamming communications. "We need to move," Catharix signaled. They loaded themselves with weapons and started back. But when they reached the maintenance tunnel entrance, they heard voices. Raiders searching the area. Someone had found the unconscious guards. "We can't go back the way we came," Junho said. Day pulled up the station map on his datapad. There was another route, but it went through the central plaza. "Open ground dangerous, but maybe that was the point. New plan," he said. "We don't sneak. We run fast and loud. Draw as many raiders as possible toward us and away from the others." "That's suicide," Junho protested. "That's tactics," Day corrected. "We have weapons now. We make noise, create chaos, give the main group time to regroup." They ran. D had never run so fast in his life. They burst into the central plaza, and raiders immediately opened fire. Day fired back, not aiming, just shooting. Junho did the same. The Thrace scattered, moving too fast for the raiders to track. It was chaos. Pure chaos, and that was exactly what Day wanted. He spotted a container of oxygen canisters, the kind used for emergency life support. He shot one. It exploded with a satisfying boom. Fire suppressant foam sprayed everywhere. Visibility dropped to nothing. "Move," he shouted. They used the confusion to escape into a side corridor. Behind them he could hear raiders shouting, organizing. "Good, let them focus here. Let them think the threat was in the plaza." By the time they reached the rendezvous point, Day was exhausted. His ears rang from weapons fire. His hands were steady now, though. The shaking had stopped. The main group was waiting. Everyone looked relieved to see them. Day distributed the weapons. Even the non-combatants got something they could use. Tralvin approached him. "You fought well, translator. You think like a warrior." "I think like a linguist," Day said again, but this time it sounded less convincing. He had just led a raid on an armory. He had fought armed guards. He had created a tactical diversion that probably saved lives. Hana was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. "You're full of surprises, Kwande?" "I surprise myself," he admitted. Yuna checked the weapons they had acquired. "This is good. We can actually fight now. But we're still outnumbered 10-1. "Then we keep doing what we're doing," Day said. "We move fast. We think different. We use every advantage our diversity gives us." One of the Thrace released an affirmative pheromone. The Valerians nodded. The humans looked determined. They had gone from victims to fighters, from individuals to a team, and somehow the translator who had just come to work a simple job was leading them. Day looked at his hands. There was purple blood on them. Krell blood from the fight in the armory. He should have felt horrified. Instead, he just felt focused. They had a station to save. Word spread through the station faster than Day expected. Survivors hiding in sealed rooms heard about the multi-species resistance group. They heard about the human translator who spoke a dozen languages and thought like a warrior. They wanted to join. By the time the group reached the residential sector, they numbered 30 beings. 10 different species. Day had to create a basic tactical language that everyone could understand. He mixed Valerian commands, Thrace chemical signals, and human efficiency into something new. A hybrid war cant that had never existed before. "We can't keep running," Yuna said during a brief rest. "Eventually they'll corner us." "Then we stop running," Day said. He pulled up the station schematic. The control room. "If we take it back, we can unlock the communications, call for help, and override the lockdowns." "The control room will be heavily defended," Tralvin pointed out. "Yes," Day agreed, "which is why we need a real plan. Not just tactics, strategy." He gathered the group leaders around the datapad. Tralvin for the Valerians, Catharix for the Thrace, Hana for the humans, representatives from the other species. They all looked at him, waiting. Day took a breath. "We have advantages the raiders don't expect. The Thrace can move through ventilation systems. They can scout and report positions. The Valerians are better fighters one-on-one. Humans are good at adapting and creative thinking. The other species have their own strengths." "You want to attack on multiple fronts," Hana said. "More than that. I want to coordinate an assault that uses every species' natural abilities. The Thrace infiltrate through the vents. They'll disable the external defenses and create confusion inside. The Valerians lead a frontal assault, drawing attention. Humans and other species secure the escape routes and extract any hostages we find. That requires precise timing," Catharix signaled. "Yes," Day said. "And trust. Different species working together in ways no one has tried before." There was silence. Then Tralvin spoke. In Valerian culture, we have a word, battle weaver, one who unites different warrior clans into a single force. It is the highest honor we can give. You are becoming this, translator. I'm just trying to keep us alive, Day said. That is what battle weavers do, Tralvin replied. They spent an hour planning. Day translated each group's role through cultural frameworks they would understand. To the Valerians, he described a glorious battle where their warrior skills would shine. To the Thrace, he framed it as protecting the colony through coordinated hive action. To the humans, he simply explained what needed to be done and trusted them to figure out how. The assault began at midnight station time. The Thrace went first, silent as shadows through the ventilation systems. Day monitored their progress through a hacked security feed. Catharix and 3 other Thrace moved through the ducts toward the control room. The Valerian assault team gathered at the main corridor. Tralvin wore a captured armor vest. His ceremonial blade gleamed under the emergency lights. Behind him, 5 other Valerian warriors prepared for battle. They would hit the control room doors with overwhelming force. Day led the extraction team. Yuna, Junho, Hana, and representatives from 4 other species. Their job was to reach the hostages being held in the docking bay and get them to safety before the raiders could use them as shields. Everyone ready? Day asked in his hybrid tactical language. Affirmative signals came back in multiple forms. Spoken words, chemical releases, physical gestures. A symphony of agreement, go. The Thrace struck first. Through the vents, they released a concentrated cloud of confusion pheromones directly into the control room's air supply. The raiders inside started coughing, their coordination failing. Then Catharix and the others dropped from the ceiling, their sharp limbs finding vulnerable points in raider armor. The Valerian assault hit the doors 30 seconds later. The reinforced barrier stood no chance against Tralvin's fury. He and his warriors poured through, their blades singing. The raiders tried to form a defensive line, but they were already disoriented from the Thrace attack. Day's team ran for the docking bay. They encountered raiders along the way, short, brutal fights. Day fired his weapon with more confidence now. He had stopped thinking about each shot and started trusting his instincts. They reached the docking bay to find 50 hostages, guarded by 15 raiders. Too many for a direct assault. We need a distraction, Yuna whispered. Day thought fast. The raiders were monitoring the control room battle on their communicators. They were nervous, uncertain. He could use that. Junho, can you fake an explosion in Sector 4? With these canisters? Yunho picked up an emergency supply container. Yeah, I can make noise. Do it. Make them think reinforcements are landing. Make it loud, Junho ran off. 2 minutes later, a massive boom echoed through the station. The raiders in the docking bay immediately turned toward the sound. Half of them rushed toward Sector 4 to investigate. That left 8 guards. Still too many, but better odds. Hana, take your team left. Yuna, go right. I'll go straight down the middle and get their attention. That's the dangerous position, Yuna protested. I know. Dee checked his weapon. But I speak their language, literally. He walked out into the open again, hands partially raised. Krell warriors, he called out in battle cant. Your control room has fallen. Commander Gorth is calling a retreat. The raiders turned toward him. One raised his weapon. Wait, Day continued. Your commander wants the hostages moved to the shuttles. He sent me to coordinate. I'm a neutral translator. It was a gamble. Raiders worked on hierarchy and orders. If he could create enough confusion even for a few seconds. One raider lowered his weapon slightly. Gorth sent a human? Would I be here otherwise? Day replied, his heart hammering. That moment of hesitation was all they needed. Yuna and Hana's teams opened fire from the flanks. The raiders went down, caught in the crossfire. The hostages screamed but stayed down. Move, Day shouted, switching to common station language. Everyone out now! The hostages ran. Day and his team covered their escape, fighting the remaining raiders. One raider tackled Day and they crashed to the floor. The raider's armored fist connected with Day's ribs. Pain exploded through his chest, but Day still had his weapon. He jammed it against the raider's exposed neck joint and pulled the trigger. The raider went limp. Day shoved the body off and struggled to his feet, gasping. Day! Yuna grabbed his arm. You're hit. He looked down. Blood was spreading across his jacket. Not from the raider. From his side, he must have taken shrapnel from one of the energy weapons. The adrenaline had kept him from noticing. I'm okay, he lied. Keep moving. They regrouped outside the docking bay. The hostages were safe, but Day could feel himself getting weaker. His vision was starting to blur. "Control room is secure," Tralavan's voice came through the communicator. They had communications back. "The raiders are retreating to Sector 2. Corner them there," Day said into the comm, trying to keep his voice steady. "All teams converge. We end this." "Day, you need a medical bay," Hana said. "After we win," Day replied. The final battle happened in Sector 2, a large cargo area where the raiders had gathered. Gorth, their leader, stood in the center. He was massive, easily twice the size of any Valerian. His armor was covered in kill marks from a dozen different species. "You fought well, little beings," Gorth said in his own language, which Day translated automatically. "But you cannot win. I am Gorth the Conqueror. I have taken 6 worlds." "You won't take this station," Day said. His vision was narrowing, darkness creeping in at the edges, but he forced himself to stand straight. Gorth laughed. "And who will stop me? A translator? Your species is weak. You survive by serving stronger races." "That's where you're wrong," Day said. "We survive by understanding what makes species strong, and then we make it stronger together." He gestured to the group behind him. Valerians and Thrace fighting side by side, humans coordinating with species they had barely met, multiple races moving as one unit with one purpose. "Charge!" Tralvan roared. The multi-species force hit the raiders like a wave. Day tried to keep up, but his legs weren't working right. He stumbled, went down on one knee. Through the chaos, he saw Gorth pushing toward him. The massive raider leader raised his weapon. Day tried to lift his own, but his arms felt like lead. Then Tralvan was there, blade flashing. And Catharix moving faster than thought. The Valerian and the Thrace warrior working in perfect synchronization, attacking Gorth from 2 sides. Gorth fell. The remaining raiders threw down their weapons. It was over. Day collapsed completely, his strength finally gone. Someone caught him. Yuna, he thought. Or maybe Hana. Voices shouted for medical help. The world was getting very dark, but before the darkness took him, Day felt satisfaction. They had won. Different species, working together, had defeated an enemy that should have crushed them. He had only come to translate. But somehow he had helped them all find a common language. The language of unity. Day woke up in the medical bay 3 days later. The lights were too bright. Everything hurt. But he was alive. A doctor, one of the small aliens he had helped rescue, checked his vital signs. "You are very lucky, human. The shrapnel missed your major organs by centimeters. You lost much blood. How long was I out?" Day's voice was rough. 72 hours. "Your body needed rest. You had multiple injuries. Broken ribs, shrapnel wounds, burns, severe exhaustion." The doctor made a clicking sound that might have been disapproval. "You should not have kept fighting in your condition. Didn't have a choice, perhaps. But you are fortunate. Your friends demanded the best care for you." Friends. Day thought about that word. He had come here alone, just another freelance translator taking a job. Now he had friends from species across the galaxy. Yuna entered the medical bay carrying a data pad. She smiled when she saw he was awake. "Welcome back. You gave us a scare. How is everyone?" Dee asked. "Tired, injured, but alive thanks to you. The raiders are in custody. Station security arrived 4 hours after the battle ended. They're calling it the most successful multi-species defensive action in recorded history." "I just translated," Day said weakly. "No," Yuna said firmly. "You did much more than that." Over the next few days, Day received visitors. Tralvan came, bringing gifts from the Valerian Empire, a ceremonial blade marked with the symbol of a battle weaver. "You have earned this title," the commander said. "In my culture, this is the highest honor. You united different clans into one force. You thought like a warrior and a wise leader together." Catharix visited with 3 other Thrace. They released pheromones of deep gratitude, a chemical signal that Day's translator equipment interpreted as something like colony savior. The Thrace wanted to invite him to their homeworld, an honor they had never given to any outsider in 3 generations. Hana came with official documents. "The Station Council wants to give you a commendation. The Galactic Trade Federation wants to interview you, and there are at least 6 governments offering you positions as a strategic advisor." "That's a lot," Day said. "You showed them something they didn't think was possible, species that barely tolerate each other, working together like a single organism. Military analysts are studying what you did. They're calling it the crosspoint method. I didn't invent anything, Day protested. I just helped people communicate. Exactly, Hannah said. And that changed everything. When Day was finally cleared to leave medical bay, he expected to quietly return to his quarters. Instead, he found a crowd waiting in the corridor. Hundreds of beings. Valerians, Thrace, humans, and dozens of other species. Survivors from the battle and residents who had been rescued. They started cheering when they saw him. Day stood there, overwhelmed. Warriors saluted. The Thrace released clouds of celebration pheromones. Species that had no tradition of applause found their own ways to show respect. Some bowed. Some made clicking sounds. Some simply stood in reverent silence. What is this? Day asked Yuna, who had escorted him from medical bay. This is respect, she said. You're a hero, Day. You united everyone when we needed it most. These people want you to know they're grateful. Day walked slowly through the crowd, still weak from his injuries. People reached out to touch his hand or his shoulder as he passed. A young human child held up a drawing she had made. It showed stick figures of different shapes and sizes, all holding hands. At the center was a figure labeled the Translator. I'm not a hero, Day said to Yuna. I was terrified the whole time. Heroes usually are, she replied. The station held a ceremony 2 weeks later. Day stood on a platform in the central plaza, the same place where he had created chaos with oxygen canisters. Now it was filled with peaceful crowds. Representatives from a dozen governments gave speeches. The Valerian ambassador spoke about courage and unity. The Thrace delegation released formal pheromones of gratitude. Human officials talked about the importance of cross-species cooperation. When it was Day's turn to speak, he kept it simple. I came here to do a job, translate between two species who were negotiating a trade deal. Instead, I found myself translating between many species trying to survive. What I learned is that communication is more than words. It's about understanding how others think, what they value, and finding common ground even when everything seems different. He paused, looking out at the crowd. So many faces, so many species. Every species has strengths. The Valerians have warrior courage. The Thrace have tactical coordination. Humans have adaptability. Others have their own gifts. But separately, we're all vulnerable. Together, we're unstoppable. That's not just military strategy. That's how we should live, the crowd cheered. Day felt embarrassed by the attention, but also proud. They had survived something terrible and emerged stronger. After the ceremony, the job offers came flooding in. The Valerian Empire wanted him as a strategic cultural advisor, a position they had created specifically for him. The Thrace Collective wanted him to train their diplomats in multi-species coordination. 3 human governments wanted him to lead their xenorelations departments. Day declined them all. Instead, he proposed something different, a training program for xenolinguists who could also serve as crisis mediators, people who understood that translation wasn't just about words, but about bridging the vast differences between species in moments of chaos. Language shapes how we think, he explained to the program committee. If we train linguists to think tactically, culturally, and empathetically all at once, we can create a new generation of people who can unite others during crises. The program was approved within a month. Funding came from multiple governments and corporations. They called it the Translator Corps, though some people referred to it as the Battle Weaver Academy. 6 months after the Crosspoint Haven incident, Day returned to freelance work. He took translation jobs across the galaxy, but everything had changed. Station administrators now treated him with respect. Species that had once dismissed humans now listened when he spoke. Other linguists sought his advice. He carried the Valerian ceremonial blade with him, a reminder of what he had learned. That understanding others was its own form of strength. That diversity was a weapon when wielded correctly. That the right words at the right time could be more powerful than any gun. One evening, Day sat in his quarters on a transport ship, reviewing a new job offer. Another trade negotiation, simple work, exactly what he had been doing before Crosspoint Haven. His communicator chimed. A message from Yuna. She was working station security on a different orbital platform now. Heard you're back to translating. Miss the action? Day smiled and typed back. Action is overrated. I prefer boring negotiations. But even as he wrote it, he knew it wasn't completely true. The experience had changed him. He had learned that he was capable of more than he thought. that humans were capable of more than most species believed. He looked at his reflection in the viewport. His scars had healed, but the memories remained. Running through corridors, fighting raiders, coordinating species that had never worked together before, leading people through impossible situations. He had only come to translate. A simple job on a neutral station, but he had left covered in blood and cheered by all. He had left as proof that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or physical strength. It was understanding. The ability to see how others thought, to bridge gaps between different minds and to unite diversity into strength. 3 months later, the first class of Translator Corps graduated. 20 students from different human colonies, all trained in linguistics, tactics, and crisis management. They would go out into the galaxy as Day had, working as translators. But they would also carry the knowledge that their work could be more than routine, that they could be bridges between species, especially in the darkest moments. Day attended their graduation ceremony. He gave a short speech about the importance of understanding, about seeing communication as a tool for unity, rather than just information exchange. After the ceremony, one of the graduates approached him. A young woman named Mireille. "Do you ever regret what happened at Crosspoint Haven?" she asked. Day thought about the question. The fear, the pain, the violence, the blood, but also the unity, the impossible cooperation, the proof that different species could become one force. "No," he said finally. "It showed me what translation really means. Not just converting words from one language to another, but helping different minds understand each other deeply enough to act as one. That's worth any risk," Mireille nodded. "I hope I can be half as good as you someday." "You'll be better," Dee said. "Because you'll learn from what I did wrong and you'll have training I never had. You'll be ready for crises in ways I wasn't." As he left the graduation ceremony, Day felt satisfied. The legacy of Crosspoint Haven wasn't his alone anymore. It belonged to everyone who learned that communication was more than words. It belonged to every species that learned to work together despite their differences. He was just a translator. But sometimes that was exactly what the galaxy needed most. The end.